All right, friends, to start our art today, we're going to start with our white paper and we're going to be taking our pencil and tracing our hands. Now, when you trace your hand, I want you to also trace a little bit of your wrist too. So place your hand kind of in the middle of your white paper. Now, when you trace your hand, I want you to make sure your pencil is straight up and down like this. It's not curving under your fingers. It should just be straight around your fingers. So hold your pencil straight up, start with your wrist. See how my pencil is sticking straight up? I'm going around all of my fingers. And I'm going pretty slow here to make sure I get my hand traced and looking like my real hand. And then when I get all the way back to the end of my wrist, I'm going to stop. And then I finish tracing my hand. If I missed any of my lines, I can just go back in and draw them back in. Now we're going to be painting our hand different shades of colors. So what I'm going to do is take my pencil and just make some lines on my arm and my hand. And these are diagonal lines because they're kind of breaking up my hand into different spaces that I can paint. So it's going to end up kind of looking like a bunch of little triangles all over my hand. And eventually we're going to cut these out, so don't worry if your lines go outside of your hand. All right, I don't want to make my spaces too tiny because that might be a little bit too tough to paint with my brush. So I'm going to make sure I have some bigger shapes on my hand. And if you cut up your shapes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, probably between 10 and 15 shapes is a good amount. All right, now I'm going to place my paper to the side here. Actually, I'm going to put my name on it just in case on the bottom here. And then I'm going to take my paint tray and my brush and I'm going to start to mix up some colors. Now we learned that we're making neutrals today and there's a few different ways you can make neutrals. So I'm going to start with the first way that you can make a neutral, which is mixing your black, your brown, and your white to make different types of neutrals. And then we'll talk about mixing the red, yellows, and the blues. So when you mix up your neutrals here, try and mix a different type of neutral in each of these spots of your paint palette. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to start with white, and I'm just going to get a little glob of white here and I'm going to put it inside of one of the spots of my paint palette. Wash my brush and dry it really good, make sure there's no more white on there, and then I'm going to take a tiny bit of brown, wash my brush, tiny bit of black. Black and brown are very dark colors. They kind of take over the white a little bit, so don't take that much, just take a tiny bit, put it in there, and then start to mix. After I mix, I will notice that I have a nice skin color there that I can use in my picture. So I'm going to scoop up that color. I'm going to take it over to my paper and I'm going to carefully paint one of my shapes to start. I'm using my paintbrush nice and flat and smooth, back and forth to fill the whole shape. Now again, if you go outside of your hand like that, that's okay. We're going to cut the hands out anyway, so don't worry. All right, I'm gonna wash my brush and I'm gonna try another different type of neutral. So that kind of looks like a nice brown color that I mixed up, but I could also take my white, wash my brush, and instead of taking a tiny bit brown, I can take more brown and no black. Let's see what that makes. Oh, that makes a different type of brown. Look at that. They are similar, but they're a little bit different. So I'm going to use that next neutral to paint in my next shape. So I can keep using different combinations of white, black, and brown to make different neutrals. Or here's another way I can make neutrals. Did you know if you mix all the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, it'll also make kind of like a brownish color. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to start with yellow and take a lot of yellow, then a medium amount of red, and then a tiny bit of blue. Blue is so dark, remember, it kind of overpowers the color. So see, big, medium, small, light to dark. Then I'm gonna mix these up. It should make a nice brown for me. If for some reason my color did not come out brown, I might need to take different combinations of my colors and add a little bit more until I get the right color. Now this is kind of tricky to get the right color using primaries to make a neutral. I can also add a little bit of white to lighten it up. So try your best with this. And I think I'm gonna add a little bit more blue and yellow, and I think that's gonna make a nice brown color for me. Yeah, that looks pretty good. See how I keep adding a little bit more until I got it right? And then I'm gonna use that color to paint in my next shape. And look, this neutral is a little bit different from my other neutrals. And that is great. That's part of diversity, seeing different skin colors of different people all over the world. All right, I can also use this same color and I can even add more white to it if I want. And I can get a different skin color. I can even add more red to it and white, and it will create more of a peachy color for me. Try to add a little bit more yellow to it too. So color mixing is kind of like a science. You have to keep mixing different colors until you get the color that you like. All right, I'm gonna keep mixing my colors until I get all of my shapes painted. Now, when my paint is dry next week, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this out. So I'm gonna put this on the drying rack to dry for now. If I have any time left today, what I can do is I can start the second part of my art, which is making my background. And on my background, I am just gonna simply draw a big heart. And I'm gonna be gluing my hand in the middle of my heart. So what I'm gonna do is just pick two colors, one color for the heart and one color for the background. I think I'll pick red for the heart and blue for the background. So I'm just gonna take my brush and just use red to paint my heart all the way, and then I will use blue to paint my background. All right, I finished painting my heart background, and my paper of my hand that I painted all of my neutral colors is ready to be cut out because it's dry. So I'm going to take my scissors now and cut this out, and I'm going to carefully try and cut out around the lines that I traced of my hand last time. And sometimes it might help if you go like this with your hand. You cut it out in like a big circle, take your scraps, throw them away. And then you can go into the little parts and cut out the little parts now that you have all the background scraps away. All right, I'm gonna throw away the rest of my scraps. And now my hand is ready to be glued onto my background. Now, if your background is still wet, guess what? It's totally okay to glue down your hand to your wet background. Wet glue and wet paint can stick together just fine. So I'm gonna take my glue bottle and I'm gonna make sure I glue only around the edges of my hand. I don't want a whole bunch of glue in the middle. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of glue around all the edges. All the way back to the beginning, almost like I traced my hand a second time. And then I'm going to glue my hand right in the middle. See how my wrist is touching the bottom? My fingers are on top, right in the middle of my heart. That is awesome. All right, I finished my art. If I want to add anything to the background, I can add things to the background. Like if I want to write something, like write a nice message about diversity, I can do that. I can cut out some shapes and glue to the background if I want, or I can just leave it just like this. All right, I'm gonna put this on the drying rack to dry, and I am done.